Bex here. As you may know, I am up to my eyeballs in summer sewing projects, and one of the things that I am working on is my ball gown for the Hellfire Gala, which is being hosted by Marvel Comics during San Diego Comic-Con. My husband, as you may know, is going to be doing a Kingpin cosplay, and I'm currently sourcing all of the materials and gathering everything I need for that. That'll be its own separate video. But I did want to talk a little bit about what I'm going to do for myself. I didn't really have a specific character that I wanted to cosplay as. And part of that is I am not shaped like a comic book woman. And a lot of the outfits that they make would just make me feel really self-conscious. So I did want to wear something that was going to be flattering to me, but then also still has that heightened level of glamour and power that you would expect from, like a mutant, right? One of my big considerations was that I didn't want to spend a lot of money buying materials for a specific project when I didn't really have a specific direction in mind. If I had chosen a character and was going to try to do an exact replica of that character's outfit, that would have been one thing. But I didn't, and I'm going with my husband. He's being Wilson Fisk. I don't even know if his wife is a thing in the comic books right now. I know there's a lot of different continuities and I haven't really kept up. What she looks like, if she is going, what she might wear. And of course, the actual Hellfire comics aren't being released until we're already at Comic-Con. So even if I did want to do something like that, I wouldn't have time because it would literally have to be like a time travel situation. So I decided that I wanted to kind of go through and use what I already have in my stash or something that I'm going to use for another project that I already have planned out. So that way I'm not buying something specific for a thing.
All right, so I still have like yards and yards and miles of this black snakeskin that I used for my Maleficent dress. And I was thinking, like, I already have this in my stash. What can I do with it? And then we went to see Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. And there was this practically blink and you miss it part of Gwen's backstory where she's at prom. And she was wearing this leather jacket over her prom dress. And I was just so inspired. I was like, that's a look. Okay, so I have this. This would be a really cute leather jacket. So I went and I got this pattern. This is the McCall's M8188. I just got it off of Amazon. But you see, it's kind of like a really cool little motorcycle jacket thing going on. But then you can unzip it. And the way that it's faced, obviously I would be doing this with the snake skin, so it would just be like all kinds of snake skin. And then I was thinking, okay, if I'm going to be doing like all of this snake skin leather jacket, what do I need underneath? So I ordered this green, it's a matte satin polyester. So I don't know if you can kind of tell here, but it is, it's not as shiny as a lot of like polyesters. It kind of has, I don't want to say it's matte because obviously like there is a sheen to it, but it doesn't have that like really artificial shine. So it kind of gives it more of an appearance of like a natural silk. So my plan is I'm going to go ahead and make my gown out of this, and then over it will be this motorcycle jacket in the snakeskin. Whenever I use a commercial pattern, I like to just trace the size that I need with a big sheet of wax paper and then cut out the paper from that, because then I have the exact size that I need without messing up the other sizes in case I ever want to go back and make this pattern again in a different size. And it just helps me keep all of my pieces organized. And this had a lot of pieces. A lot of them had to be interfaced. So that took a long while. That was probably the longest part of this entire process, was just making sure that I got all of my pieces cut and interfaced. If you saw my Maleficent video, you saw how hard it was for me to iron these seams open because they're plastic. But this pattern actually wants you to just edge stitch all the seams open, and look how flat they are with no ironing at all. And look at how nice on the outside. So definitely recommending edge stitching on this.
So I have the shell of the jacket mostly done. So you see there's like the zipper kind of is off to the side. It's not a center zip. And then you can kind of do this thing. This will be all the snake skin here as well when it's done. So I can have this that's just like snake on snake. Or I can open this up and then you'll see like the gown underneath, and then this can just kind of like lay open. So I think that might be really cute. But definitely there is options. And then of course, you know, if it gets cold or if I get hot, and then the idea too is, you know, I could always just take it off. But now that I have this will help me plan, because what I actually need to do is when I do the lining is, you might notice there are no pockets. And I considered putting pockets on the outside, but it kind of messes with the line because of where the seam is. And I kind of do want it to have like that nice tailored look. So I am going to do some hidden welt pockets on the inside of the lining. So this kind of helps me figure out where those are going to be. But I think that'll be really nice. And then it feels like there's some extra fabric here. And definitely if I was making like a really tailored bodice, I would be really bugged by like this extra little flappy right here. But the thing is, because this is a jacket and it's going to be an outer layer, you don't need it to be like super fitted. And also, I don't want to make any adjustments because I don't know what this is going to look like when I get the belt on, when I get the zipper on, the sleeves, like all of those things are going to change how this fits. And by the time I'm done, it might not actually even be an issue. So right now I haven't made any adjustments to this pattern at all. This is just the straight extra large pattern, but I think this will work out pretty well.
Okay, so here is my front piece. And then what I want to do is see how much room I have to do a welt pocket. So I'm gonna do, instead of 5/8 of an inch, I'm gonna do 3/4 of an inch, just to make sure I have enough room. To figure out the maximum size for this pocket piece, I'm just going ahead and making a quick sketch of a rectangle that's 3/4 of an inch away from the edge of the pattern pieces, because assuming a 5/8 inch seam allowance, this will make sure that it won't get caught in the seam allowance when I'm sewing, but still be big enough for my phone. And so it worked out for me that it was going to be about 6.5 inches by 7.5 inches. A welt pocket is basically a bag that is in between two layers of your garment, that you access through a little slit or a welt. And so I'm just drafting this on my own. Basically, I just want to make sure it's big enough to accommodate the phone that I want to carry and have some seam allowance. Then I just sketched out the slit for the welt, and how big I wanted it to be, how long. I did kind of mess up a little bit, but you know what? This is going to be on the inside of my jacket, and no one's going to see it but me, so it can be whatever I say it is. And just marking up some cutting lines real quick before moving on. Little final check. Imagine that I'm sliding my phone in through that slit and that it'll fit, and that there's room on the bottom for the seam allowance, and the phone will be easily accessible. Like, it's not going to get like lost because it's so deep in there. So this is looking perfect. I'm going to go ahead and use this as the basis for my pocket. Okay, quick and dirty welt pocket tutorial. This is the piece where I want my pocket, and I have interfaced the back, and on the front I am pinning the interfaced pocket piece. And I have marked the cutting lines on both interfaced pieces because I want that to be very, very secure. And what I'm doing now is pinning through both pieces to make sure that they perfectly line up, because I want the cutting lines on the front and the back to be exactly the same. And now that the top and bottom pieces of the pocket match up, I'm going to go ahead and stitch all along that outside edge. Now that I have sewn all the way around, I'm going to go ahead and just cut on those cutting lines that I had marked before. So down the center and then into each little corner. So that way you end up with like this little Y situation on each cut, and that'll help make it look really, really nice and crisp when we flip the pocket inside out. So now you see there's like these little lips. I'm just going to iron them all back and make them nice and crisp. The more you iron now, the prettier it will look later. People don't believe me, there is so much ironing and sewing. There's more ironing than actually sitting at the sewing machine. Go ahead and take your time with this. Make it nice and crisp and as flat as possible. So now you're going to take all of that big pocket piece and you're going to just flip it inside of that hole that you just made. So see how there is that rectangle on the outside? That's totally for illustrative purposes, so you guys can see where the pocket was going to be and not because I accidentally marked the wrong side of my piece. But so you can kind of see now how it's all coming together, and you see that there is like a big open slit, like a window, and I'm just making sure everything is nice and flat. And seriously, with the ironing, people don't believe me, there is so much ironing going on. So right now you have this big window in your lining that you could see the wrong side of your outside fabric with. So what we're going to do is just kind of pull this up and tuck it. And then that way, you see it covers the window. Oh, and doesn't that look nice? All nice and finished. And then that way you don't see through to the backside of your exterior fabric, and it's all self-lined and it looks really nice and finished from the inside. And the way that we're going to keep this in place is that we are going to look for, the little Y, triangle things that we cut. We're going to pin those down through all of that folded fabric. And then that way we can just put a few little stitches right there, and that'll keep all of the pieces that we just folded and cut right where we want them to be without them shifting around. So I have sewn around the little Y so everything is nice and secure. So now if you look at it from the front, you're going to see this nice little pocket, and it's going to have this nice tailored opening, and then you can put, whatever you need in. But of course, there's no pocket yet, so we need to make that. So what I've done is I've taken a rectangle that's the same width as my pocket and a little bit longer, and I've sewn it along the top at that like little lip part, and then I've sewn it at the bottom. So it is longer. You see how like there's like that extra floppy bit of fabric, but that's exactly what we want. So we're just gonna fold it till it's nice and neat and kind of flush with the seam allowance of the bottom part, and then we can just sew up the sides with, your regular seam allowance, 1/2 inch, 5/8, whatever you want to do. And then what that's going to do is give the pocket a little bit of breathing room. You don't want it to be exactly flush because then you can only put things in your pocket that are exactly flat. So this allows the pocket to have kind of a little bit of depth for whatever you're going to put in there. And this is what your finished pocket looks like from the inside. You see that it's going to go kind of right up against the seam allowance when you put your pieces together, but that's totally fine. Now I'm just going around and sewing the lining of the jacket to the exterior portion. These pieces just pretty much sandwich together. I just want to make sure that they are staying nice and flat and the seam allowances are all laying the way that they're supposed to be. On this jacket, one side of the zipper actually goes in between the layers of the lining and the exterior. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and switch using to my zipper foot when I sew this side of the jacket, just to make sure that I get way up close and it looks nice and finished. This jacket has you insert your lining before you put on the sleeves, and so you just kind of go all the way around. And there is that zipper that is in the front part, so it's really hidden in there. But when you flip it all the way around, the zipper is going to be nice and neat right there at the very, very edge of the jacket. And so that way you have it kind of almost hidden on one side, and then you have the overlap part. All right, so I have it flipped right side out. This is pretty much what it will look like. It needs a good press. You can see the ends are still kind of bubbly, so I just need to iron these down. And then inside, you will see the pockets that I installed earlier today. And you'll notice they are kind of further back, but that's fine because it'll make things kind of closer to my body. And then I still have all of this, so they're very hidden pockets. And so when I have it open, you can just see snakeskin, and you don't have to worry about seeing all of this back here. And then I can keep, you know, my phone or whatever else very close to me. Just a little update, the jacket is almost done, which is good because we need to be leaving in a little less than a week for Comic-Con, and I still have a lot of other projects to do. So all that's really left on this is the front zipper. The issue that I have is that it's kind of an interesting design choice in that you just get the zipper and sew it down to the front and leave the kind of the zipper tape exposed. But I'm curvier than the jacket, so I'm trying to figure out the best way to get these pieces to lay flat, but then still look nice when it's exposed. So that's gonna just take a little bit of finagling, I think. But otherwise, the jacket is done and I can move on to the gown. As you may know, I follow Gertie's Patreon, and I think I'm going to go ahead and do this bodice. I've had it in my stash for a while, and I've been looking for a good excuse, but I am thinking of doing this green sleeveless version just because I want to be wearing it underneath that leather jacket, and I don't want to have those strappy things. I'm not going to do a step-by-step of the bodice. Seriously, if you want it, just go on Gertie's Patreon. It's like $9. You get the pattern and a video tutorial. What I will focus on is how I figure out what kind of skirt I want. Quick side note, seeing the green satin next to these gold scraps from my husband's outfit is giving me Loki vibes. This is Jean Grey's Hellfire outfit, and I totally love this look with this like super long green gown and then the huge slit like papow. But then looking at it, I realized it's actually pants. And I'm not really down for like a weird jumpsuit situation, but I do really like the vibe of this. So what I'm gonna do is a long green skirt. So when I'm just standing, it looks very demure. But then I want to have a really like serious slit in the front with like that high boot situation, because then it's like papow. I really think that'll look really cool. So I have a 3/4 circle skirt pattern already worked out, and what I think I'm gonna do is measuring on my bodice. So obviously it would match up against the center front seam, but I want it to overlap and go over toward this next style line. So I'm just gonna go ahead and measure from the center seam where it would normally end to the next style line and then add a seam allowance, and that'll tell me how much more space I need to add to the waistband of the skirt piece that I already have figured out. So for here, it's gonna make me have to add about 4 inches. I'm using the slash and spread method. So basically what I'm doing is I'm taking my pattern piece and I am gonna make a few slashes all the way down, and then that way I can spread them open until I get that extra width that I wanted. And then all I have to do is fill in those spaces I created with some extra paper, and there is my pattern piece ready to go. I took my altered piece and used it to cut out 2 front panels for the skirt. So basically what I did is I used the back pattern piece to cut the overlapping front pieces, and then I took what is normally the front piece of my skirt and used it to cut out this huge piece for the back half of my skirt. What I should have done is included a seam allowance for the zipper, which I forgot to do. Best practices is that I should have done a slash and spread and added 1.25 inches down that center, so that way it would have had extra room to accommodate the zipper. But because it is such a full skirt, it ended up not being a big deal. And you know I had to add pockets. The gown for the Hellfire Gala is complete. So you see my overlapping slit matches up with the style lines on the bodice, and then it kind of, you know, goes back and forth, so that way it has some movement. I can kick my legs when I dance.
but then otherwise it just looks like a very long, elegant ball gown. I've just tried this on real quick just to check. I did mess up a little bit with my crisscross strappy things on the front, but that's something I can take into account when I do my labyrinth ball gown next month. Same in the back, there's a little bit, you can kind of see where the corset peeks out a little bit. Now, if I was just wearing this gown on my own, I would probably be really self-conscious and doing this kind of stuff all night. But because I am wearing that leather jacket over this, I'm not going to stress about these weird crisscrossy things or the fact that my corset might be peeking out. And then between the pockets that I added to my jacket and these pockets here, I am not going to have a purse, which is perfect because then I can have my hands free while we explore and dance and drink and whatever else we're going to do. So all in all, I'm very happy with how this gown came out, and it's going to be a lot of fun.
If I'm going to have this amazing slit down the front of my gown, well then I might as well have something amazing underneath that you get little peeks of. I still had quite a bit of that stretchy snakeskin fabric that I used for the jacket, and I decided that what I would do was go ahead and make some thigh-high boots so that when I walk and I dance, you can see them peek out of my gown. You might have seen similar tutorials other places on the internet, but really quick, what I'm doing is wrapping my leg in saran wrap, and then I'm going to go over the whole leg with duct tape, and this is going to create a pattern that's the exact size of my leg. Just like when you're doing any kind of pattern drafting, how you want to wear the undergarments you're going to wear when you wear that outfit, you want to wear the shoes that you're going to wear as the base for your boot when you're making the pattern. And as a tip, you don't need a friend to help you with this, but it makes it so much easier, especially when you start getting a couple of layers of the duct tape and you can't really move your knee anymore. Once the leg is completely covered in duct tape, then you just go ahead and make some cutting lines where you're going to separate your different pieces of the pattern. So I'm doing a straight line up the front and then up the back, and then just all around the sole of my foot where my heel will meet. Now that I'm happy with the shape and the length of my boot, I'm going to just go ahead and cut it off of my leg, and that way I can just flatten these pieces out and use them as the pattern for my fabric. I've gone ahead and marked my two pattern pieces, the inside and the outside of my thigh, because my legs aren't perfectly symmetrical on the inside and the outside, and then that way I can keep straight which piece is which. I'm taking my pattern pieces and I'm flattening them out on a big piece of paper so I can trace them out and then go in and add seam allowances, and then that will be my final pattern piece to use to cut out the fabric. So you can see I just did a little 1/2 inch seam allowance all around the entire piece. Because there is a really strong stripe pattern in the snakeskin, I just want to make sure all of my pieces are nice and straight along the grain. So when I do wear the boots, you just see kind of this nice long vertical of the snakeskin. The bottom part of the shoe, which is touching the ground, doesn't need to be the snakeskin, so I just used some scrap knit fabric that I had. Sewing this boot is pretty straightforward. Sew all the way down the front seam, sew all the way down the back seam, pin the sole piece to the bottom of the boot and just sew around. I did everything with a 1/2 inch seam allowance, just because that's really easy for me to measure on my sewing machine. A quick fit check before sewing the second boot. I do have a lot of extra room here in the calf, which is an issue because this is my right calf, which is bigger than my left calf since I broke my left ankle a couple of years ago. So that needs to come out and be slimmed down. I don't want to slim down too much in the front because I want to maintain my mobility. All in all, a pretty straightforward adjustment.
Now that the boots are constructed, it's just a matter of getting them so they stay up on my leg. And the solution to that is dance tights. You may have seen other tutorials that do this, and the reason that dance tights are the preferred solution is just how sturdy they are. They're a lot thicker than regular pantyhose, but still not quite as thick as like a legging. And so basically what you're gonna do is get that boot that I just sewed, slide it up over this leg, sew it across the top, and then that way when I go to put on the boots, I'm basically gonna put the boots on up over my shoes like a pair of leggings. And then that way they stay up where I want them to be. They won't shift around, they won't slide down. I don't have to worry about it. And then this should be pretty sturdy. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that now.
With my dance tights on, I have marked where I want my boots to sit up on my thigh with a laundry marker. I've marked it so that they're not slouchy, but also it's not going to be too tight. And I've also taken into account the seam allowance. Remember, when you're sewing something stretchy to something else stretchy, the most important thing is that it's evenly distributed so that when it's fully stretched out, everything lays nice and flat. So it will look like a big clumpy mess right now, but when it's sewn and when it's worn, it will look correct. I've pinned the boot to the dance tight to just cover the marks that I made with that laundry marker, just in case it doesn't all the way come out. You won't see it. And then remember too, when you're sewing stretch fabrics, that you really want to stretch them out as they go through the sewing machine, or else it won't stretch correctly when you're wearing it. I'm just using a standard zigzag stitch. I think on my machine it's like 3/8 of an inch, and I'm gonna just go all around the whole top of my boot on each leg. This is what it looks like when it's sewn. So you can see it looks like all scrunchy and weird, but trust me, it will look right when you wear it. And the last thing I did was put these grippy shoe pads on the bottom of the boot. This is on just the plain knit fabric that I used for the under shoe portion. And so this is doing two things. It's one, protecting this fabric, because if you walk on fabric, it's going to eventually wear down and create a hole. And then secondly, it is, creating an extra anti-slip surface, because, having fabric, it's basically like wearing socks on tile. It's very, very slick. So that's just to protect me and protect the boot.
My outfit for the Hellfire Gala is complete. You see the base is this regular, beautiful, elegant ball gown, and then superhero. I also have my jacket to pick up on the vibe of the boots and to give it just that little bit more hard comic book edge. I haven't decided how I'm going to do my hair and makeup yet, but I do have a little bit of time to figure it out. All in all, I am very happy with how this look turned out. I'm super excited to go. I still have to do my husband's Wilson Fisk cosplay, but I am ready to go. Thank you so much for following along on my journey to make this outfit. Hopefully I'll be able to get some footage of the inside of the gala. I don't know what the setup is going to be like inside, other than that they're supposed to have several levels.
And each of these levels is supposed to have its own vibe with its own music. I can't wait to check it all out. Everything looked so amazing. All of the different areas were themed based off of stuff that was in the comic books, like this grotto area. And then you go up the stairs through this passageway, and that takes you into the main ballroom. This was the main dance floor for the event. and you can see there we had life-size cutouts of the characters. They didn't have a Wilson Fisk though. Trust me, I asked. And then downstairs there was another smaller dance floor with a bar. And they had various photo ops all over the place. Some of them had lighting or not, or just backdrops. Some had the cardboard cutouts. I didn't get too much footage inside the event itself, but I did want to leave you with just a little sneak peek of the outfit that I made for my husband. I am currently editing that video and it should be up shortly. Thanks for watching.